It's 2020. Come on.
Yeah, really?
Time zone.
I'm trying to figure out how everybody's computer can be different.
Well, I am, 15 feet to the east of you.
Yeah, that's true.
Your Eastern time.
Hi, Mike, Jeff, and Vern. Want to make sure that you can hear us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We do have Ron here, so everyone knows.
I can hear you, thank you.
I was up at Village Hall and it was mighty dark, so I figured.
My computer just flipped to 7.
It did? Oh,
I
that's,
don't know.
mine's at 6:59, but we're, as long as we have someone's computer that's on. All right, we're gonna call the Village Plan Commission meeting for November 4th to order. Roll call, please.
President Jay Linkenfeld,
Here.
Trustee Jimmy Hellwater,
Here.
Commissioner Todd Duquette,
Here.
Commissioner Randy Case, and Commissioner Eric Pedro.
Here. Let's stand for a pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're at public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Plan Commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes while the Plan Commission encourages input from residents that may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda. Do we have anybody in
We do.
cyberspace?
Yeah, we, all the participants in, on the Zoom call here are here for the item under general business number 2. And we do not have any pre-registrations for public comment.
All right, very good. We'll start with general business, approval of the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting held October 5th, 2020.
So,
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the Plan Commission from October 5th, 2020. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So moved. So we're on number 2. Discussion and possible action on the preliminary plot for Creek Crossing. We'll end up doing a general overview, Ron, if you'd like, and then we'll go through A through E.
Go ahead, Ron. So if I could here, just quickly, since we have 2 audiences here, I'll try my best to follow through the packet and the preliminary plot and the documents that we have in the packet, and try to reflect what Ron is showing here in person. Unfortunately, we're not set up to have a camera in the room here, so just an exposure for the people that are online. So with that being said, I think Jeff, I wanted to do have some summary here and start things off, and then I think Ron's going to join after that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill. My name is Jeff Lee, and I am a development consultant that is representing Creek Crossing at St. Francis Incorporated. That is the entity that is developing this 30 acres. Before you tonight is the initial submittal. It's our preliminary plat and all of the other necessary documents. I'll introduce the team. Again, we've got Ron in the room there with you, and Vern Jesse is our attorney with Murphy Desmond, and he and I will be available for questions. Ron is going to walk you through the plat and the submittals, and I believe he's got a few specific items, technical items that he'd like to discuss, but otherwise, for the most part, we are going to accept and adjust our submittal to follow staff recommendations. Big picture, we are looking to begin development of the plat in the spring. We would build all of the infrastructure you see on the plat spring, summer, with the completion in the fall. And in the fall, we would commence lot sales. We are looking to identify one or two large builders who we would make arrangements with to make bulk lot sales to. And the remaining lots would be available for individual purchase. Lot 56 in the middle of the plat is slated for a higher density. We're proposing a MR8 zoning, and that lot, approximately 3 acres, will be marketed for sale to a third-party developer who would come in and make a separate zoning request to the village for its development. And Ron will get into the details, but we've also got some lots that are zoned for duplexes, and those two will likely require a third-party developer to come in and separately complete zoning with a PD overlay for those. With that, Ron will walk you through the plat, and we will be available for questions.
Thanks, Jeff. The Plan Commission has seen this plat several times. Just to expand on what Jeff mentioned, it is mainly a mix of single-family lots. That is the bulk of it, with quite a few smaller lots, a lot of 63-foot frontages. We're looking for on a lot of these for a smaller, more modest house, but there are some larger lots around the perimeter. And then there's a series of lots here on the east side that would be set up for duplexes. And then the bigger lot in the middle for some kind of planned unit development project there, a little higher density. But with the PUD that will be needed here, as well as PUD over this duplex area, the village will have further review of all of those details. With this preliminary plat, we did submit preliminary engineering plans to show the village how sewer and water will be extended, stormwater routed, and the typical street cross sections. And those street cross sections do include sidewalk on both sides of all the public roads. For the extension of Laufenberg and Conrad Drive, we're proposing a swale between the curb and the sidewalk, like has been done previously out on KP. And for the southern loop, Angelus Way, it would be more of a typical urban street with curb, sidewalk, and terraces. Just because that's a tighter area, and with the swales, you need a wider right-of-way, you just need more room. So that is what this plat and the engineering plans reflect. All the water will be routed to a stormwater basin here, and then eventually released into Brewery Creek, which runs along the south side. With the preliminary plat, we also submitted an impact study on how this would affect the village services, and some preliminary covenants and restrictions that would govern the buildings. Village staff has made comments on each of those different categories. And as Jeff mentioned, for the most part, we don't have any issues there. We're just going to go ahead and address each of them and resubmit prior to the village board meeting coming up later. There are just a couple of things I wanted to bring up and perhaps get plan commission input for us as we move forward and perhaps for the board as well. One of those, it's really more of a technical issue perhaps for staff. One of the comments was that on this preliminary plat, they wanted to see the sidewalks. And we're committed to sidewalks. There's just no question about that. The plan, engineering plans show them, the cross sections show them. But to show them on a preliminary plat gets to be really busy. A preliminary plat is a small scale. So it'd be our preference just to put a note on the plat saying we're going to do that. And of course, keep them on the construction plans. And that way the village knows it will happen. Very minor. Another comment on the impact study was the allocation of traffic for this project, either to P or to Laufenburg. Those are really the only connections. And we, the traffic guy in our office took a look at, here's the project, with this being the village. He looked at the school here, getting up to Sauk City, to Middleton, other schools, to downtown. We felt that P was the easiest route. And part of that, because anytime you do a destination study like that, you look at other factors. And on Laufenburg, as we've talked here, it's narrow streets. It's congested because when you park on the street, there's barely room to get by. There's kids playing, there's walkers in the street because there's no sidewalks. So with all of that going on Laufenburg, our estimate was 98% of the traffic would use P. Could that be 95%? Certainly. It's all just an estimation. But again, I think the primary point would be that very little of the project would tend to go down Laufenburg just because of the congestion and the stop signs. It would take longer.
Right. But you're saying the Laufenburg would still be open?
Oh, certainly.
You're going to still open that?
We will make that connection.
You'll make that connection?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's where we pick up sewer and water, but also the street will be extended.
Right.
You bet.
And then when you say P, you mean because they're going to come out on Hill Point Road and then come down P?
That's
We're
correct.
not coming right out on P yet.
No, there's no connection directly to P. There are two connections to North Hill Point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So again, that's to me a very minor point that we can resolve with staff and update the impact study accordingly. I think my biggest point tonight would be to talk about an engineering issue. One of the comments was that the village would like to see sidewalk along Highway P along the frontage of this plat, which is fairly short because at least I was assuming that this sidewalk would be just on the west side. So our frontage there is not real long, with the ultimate goal, of course, of being connected to the village further south. And our thought is, yes, we want to definitely have the sidewalk or trail system fully connected to the rest of the village. But ultimately, when the rest of the Zander farm develops, be that 10 years, 20 years, whenever, we would prefer to do an internal trail system, north-south, to connect this and the Zander farm to the south, to that sidewalk, as well as across P to development on the other side. So that would be something I would ask the village to consider, to put that off. And I don't know how we would necessarily assure the village, but to allow that to be done at a future date when it could be done off the highway, because that seems too dangerous to me. But beyond that, again, the comments, we will address them and don't have any issues. So questions?
Yeah, Ron, I guess I'm gonna just do the broad thing. I think it would be wiser as the next step is to actually make all the changes that staff has already talked about, which you'll get tonight, and then bring it back here. You know, so we can look at it to make sure everything how it is, and then bring it to the board. I have found on that last development, because we kind of did that step, it keeps coming to the board. We're gonna be, another item's coming up again. So I'd rather have everything solid here, then move it to the next step. And if there's changes, then make it there. Otherwise, because I think there's a lot of changes from staff, and I think tonight you're gonna hear some, and to try to make all that in motion, what needs to happen, I think is difficult. I'd rather see it come back next month with all those changes so we can review it and then pass it on to the board with all the changes. That would be my recommendation. I think it's hard to keep track of these things when you know, have them contingent on this, contingent on that. So that's what I would be asking. You know, just, I think we still have plenty of time to get this. But that's what I think would be helpful, because as we go through, I think there are going to be changes, and I'd like to see, while you say you'll make the changes, I'd like to see how it looks and how it's stated before it gets to the board.
Okay. Yeah, and we can do that. I don't like losing a month, but I hear what you're saying. Unless there's something that I'm not aware of, this won't look any different, the plat itself.
Well, I don't think we're gonna recommend moving lots around or anything. But I do, like, my biggest thing for lot 56, I want it well marked, either what it's going to be or refer it to a note or something, so I'm not running into the same problem we ran with the well down, you know, well 3, where it wasn't on the plot. It looked like it was just gonna be park space. Now, in the covenants, it said there was gonna be a well there, but I wanna make sure everything's well labeled. So it's that kind of thing that I would wanna change. I think the other thing is, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I wanna make sure I know where all the easements are, because there again, I'm running into where we probably, if we would have really seen it and looked at it, easements would have been wider, because in Veridian, we got into kind of upset neighbors, because we have an easement through the regular distance between the houses. Now on this one I like, in the south, you have 20-foot easements, and then the setbacks are from that easement, so there's room there, but I couldn't tell where the other easements are for, like, I don't know if there's gas, electric, you know what I mean? I'd like to know where they are and well labeled, because we get into these legal battles, you know, where someone's claiming their property value goes down because it wasn't on the plot, you know, plat. So that's the kind of stuff I'm really looking to try to get all our I's dotted, T's crossed, and then move it.
Okay.
So those are, you know, like I say, I'll wait on some of those, but those are the things that I'm looking at, and there's a few others, but
Mhm.
the changing there, and I don't know if that's a problem or not for you.
No, it's just a process
Yeah.
that you guys want to use, so we'll do it.
Okay. Judy?
Totally agreeing with you as far as the sidewalk on P. I walk P and it's dangerous even without a sidewalk, but even with the sidewalk, it'd be awful. So whatever we can do some kind of trail, and we get rid of a sidewalk on P and not for a sidewalk on P.
Okay.
It's very dangerous.
Okay, well, we
I
can
would support that.
come back with some, I guess, more of a master plan,
Right.
showing more than just this plat to the south.
And that brings up one of the good points. We got to figure out how we're going to, because staff recommended that.
I know.
Now the board,
I know.
there's a member here, so we got to figure out how we want to do that. And we're going to have to vote on it, but, you know, that's why I wanted to come back with everything done so we know how it all shaped out.
So I'll step back here a little bit. And Mike, slightly correct me if I'm wrong, on the item in regards to displaying or showing the sidewalks, I think the emphasis on that was showing, when staff talked and discussed it, was showing the paths and the multi-use trail on the plot, because we didn't see that anywhere on the plot, nor did we see it on any of the maps in the plan. So what we're talking about here is I think we had planned for a multi-use trail to come along Brewery Creek here and kind of wrap around this outline
Right,
here.
that I would be for.
Sure.
And so to identify that so in talking about sidewalks, I think I'm okay with having a note on there referencing, maybe to the plan. I'm not too big on showing the sidewalks as, it's showing the plans already at this point. And again, Mike, stop me if I'm talking too much here.
I'm not stopping you, Bill.
So that, I think that solves some of the issues that we have here.
Okay.
We're concerned about the same things that you're concerned about, is interconnectivity for walkers, bikes, et cetera, and making sure that this community, that this neighborhood is connected to the community. And so I think, showing an extended map or view of the here, I think is important. And so that the planning commission and the village board understand what the future.
Okay.
Bill, there was one issue that, I really wanted to ask the question of the development team rather than making a comment. And that had to do with the minimum house floor area sizes that were listed in the covenants, which struck me as maybe a little bit too large for the street frontage distances that we have, and also too large given the goal of attainable cost housing. And I'm wondering if you all could just take a look at those listed floor area sizes and evaluate if you want to peg them that high as minimums.
I don't have a problem with the size of it, only because it says that, like the 1,600 or less. So they don't have to go to the 1,600, they can be less, or the 1,800 or less, or 1,400 or less. So I really don't have a problem with the sizes of what they're saying, because it's that or less. And I think
No, it's
those-
not.
No,
It is.
No, that's not correct.
It can't be less.
it can't.
Most people can have less.
No, that's not what it, this is Vern Jesse speaking. That's not what it says. It says no building shall have less than, no two-story shall have less than.
You're right.
It's not a maximum. That's being misread. I don't know who was speaking, but that's being misread. So we can take a look at them. I assume it's our decision ultimately, but I appreciate the heads up, Mike, and we'll have a conversation about it.
Well,
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to list it as a condition. I just wanted to, raise it as a question.
Right, and I'm glad you did because to be honest, I'm not sure that was given enough consideration now that I think about it, and we will take a look at that.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm glad you brought it up.
And I guess I'm with Mike on that. I think that was one of the things we were trying to go is get more housing diversity, and the size of those buildings right now, you're not gonna be able to build any of them for probably under $420,000 if you look at the $200 a square foot. So I would really like to see them dropped, the ranch maybe to 1,200, the two-story to 1,400. I think if you're uncomfortable with that being throughout the whole development, there's some of those lots that are smaller, block them saying these are the ones that can have that, but I really think we have to bring that square footage down.
In the scenic edge development, it was a 1,200 square foot minimum was the smallest, or maximum.
No,
16, this is, yeah.
Yeah, but no, in scenic edge, it was 1,200.
Oh, yeah, scenic edge,
So
correct.
we've used 1,200 as the minimum square footage prior.
Yes.
And that to me makes sense, because we do have, I think, one house that's 1,250 square foot, it's an over cow limits grade.
Let me ask you a question. Is it important to have a floor area minimum? As a group, a development team, we will talk about it, but perhaps we consider no floor area minimums, or is that important to the village?
To me, it's very important. My concern is if you are going to sell blocks of lots, then they're going to put in what they want if there's no requirement. And I'm trying to avoid that when they buy these lots, they have to have an understanding that people can, or they can put in houses that are smaller than what is now mentioned. So I think it's important to say that, and we've got to get some housing that young people and seniors that are trying to downsize can get into.
Jay, I think what he's suggesting though is that there would be no minimum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, then we might have the tiny houses come in.
Yeah.
No, we want to have a minimum.
Yeah.
Our team will talk about it, and we'll decide what we want to do.
So does it do a max?
No. The max would be tied to the size of the lot, because you got to have the setback. I took one of my things off. Are we just throwing things out right now? Because I'm kind of curious. The other thing that I know staff mentioned, and I had mentioned earlier, is the solar requirement. You have it where they can't. We clearly are going in the other direction. I think that's kind of antiquated. I think solar is now the thing, and we certainly would encourage if people want to put solar on the roof, that would be fine. And if you look in this area, the neighborhood that this connects to, this year alone, 8 homes went to put solar panels on. There's 2 just down the street from my house. You hardly notice it. They blend right into the roof. And so I certainly would like to see that removed.
As Ron noted earlier, we didn't have any objections to the changes to the covenants, so that's already been revised.
That was one of the comments.
Yeah.
And Jay, I apologize. You had made that clear on one of our meetings a few weeks ago, and I failed to ensure that got into the first draft, so it is coming out.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I just, and the other one, I know the comments were for pollinated gardens, because you have the restriction of obnoxious weeds, which I'm not sure what the definition of that would be. But And I know I talked to Ron early on this development about rain gardens and stuff. And I know I'm not necessarily saying I want them required, but I guess if someone wants to put in some rain gardens, I think we should allow them to put in the correct species of plants for rain gardens. So I don't know if we could modify that, or I wouldn't mind the language of even encouraging rain gardens. I know how there's maintenance and they don't last forever, but I do think they make some difference in the neighborhood that we have them in. You know, that's the one connected to my neighborhood, and my neighbor has one, and it works. I mean, it fills up with water, and then a couple hours later, it dries up. So that would be another one. Somehow get the wording in there that there are exceptions to the obnoxious weeds part of it, or at least that weeds.
So a rain garden would be permitted, just to be, so I'm speaking clearly, sorry, would be permitted under the covenants already. And as Ron mentioned earlier, the other comments to the covenants are all acceptable, so the pollinator language has also already been added.
I am curious about that term.
What's that?
Those are, it's the gardens where you put in like, there are certain plants that produce more food for your bees and butterflies, like weed and bee balm and wild coneflowers. So there's a big movement because those populations are going down to build small gardens for that. It helps the monarchs when they fly south. The only reason I know this is because we put in a big one at the Midtown Police Station, because that was a big thing that the neighborhood wanted. So there's species of plants that, if you look at, they recommend these are the plants that you plant.
Okay.
It's a mix of seeds that grows plants that are conducive to butterflies and bees, basically.
And the
Gardens and weeds.
the main point of conflict are milkweed plants, which are often listed as noxious weeds, but are particularly important for butterflies.
What do you want to know, right, Ron?
Yeah. You're teaching me about the birds and bees, right?
Yeah. Do you want to say something, Todd?
3.11 for driveways. We have it down as paved with concrete or asphalt within 30 days. We have generally not done the asphalt. It's usually been required as concrete.
Well, that goes to the affordability question.
Because asphalt's not taxable, concrete is. So generally speaking, new developments have always required concrete, so they get a higher tax base off of it.
Oh, I did not know that.
And concrete's permanent, asphalt is not. So from an affordability standpoint, yes, asphalt is less expensive by a considerable. But you lose, there's a trade-off, and that's just, you want to allow asphalt driveways?
Well, I guess I never really thought about it, so.
That's what I have. I don't have a problem with them.
I've never owned one. My neighbor has one, you know.
Well, you're in an older development.
Right.
So are you.
Right.
All the new ones have always been concrete. And do we want to continue that? I'm asking. I don't know.
What are people's feelings? It just kind of surprised me, so I'd have to, you know.
We can review that with engineering and facilities too. I imagine this is similar language from the Scenic Valley, as that's where this draft came from.
But I didn't think Scenic Valley we allowed asphalt driveways.
Scenic Edge was not, and I don't remember seeing it in Scenic Valley. I may have missed it, but.
Yeah, we'll you can review that.
No, I didn't catch that one.
Because I wanted an asphalt driveway, but I had to put concrete in.
Okay. So, I got a question for you, Ron. In the packet, there was this report on the 8 borings that they took and the soil samples and some of it they have to peel off and you have to wait for it to dry, and you can't do it between fall and spring because it's not supposed to be frozen. I mean, what does that really mean for this development? And it seemed like it was the southern part, and what parts of this do we have to de-water to put in, I don't know if it was utilities or the basements or. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Sure. What we did find with those borings, which were done in a very wet season, was at that time, it was shallow groundwater. Now, based on my experience from many, many projects, if you did those same borings right now, the groundwater would be significantly lower because we had a dry summer and fall. But depending on the season, we may need to de-water for putting in sewer and water. Part of that will depend on how quickly water travels through the clay soils and into the trench. But contractors do it routinely, so it's nothing unusual. We also plan to raise the grade over pretty much the whole site in order to make all the drainage work. And that also gets the homes above that higher groundwater level. So yeah, we have looked at that. And once the site is graded and raised, then I don't see any issues with digging basements where you have to do anything special.
Okay.
I have two questions on that, related to that. One is, does the watering or the wet nature of this site imply that there'll be special or different utility infrastructure construction, or is it, I mean, is it going to have to be sealed in some way because of periodic high groundwater?
Well, both the sewer and water systems are sealed systems. The nowadays sewer pipe has a bell and spigot that is watertight. The manholes have rubber boots and chimney seals. So that's also sort of a matter of course nowadays.
All right. And the second question is, and I noted the same thing, Jay, was that was how close the groundwater was to the surface on the site. Someplace in one of the borings, it was only 2 feet down. Talk a little more about the impact on the homeowners. That is, I know when I built a home, I've got, I think, a standard 8-foot basement. If you go down 8 feet here, isn't periodically the basement or the footings for the house going to be below groundwater or close to it? And I wonder if, is there any sense in including somehow in the plat or an addendum to the plat some kind of depth requirement for footings or something for the houses, so that the owners know that, you know, if they build in a dry season, but the groundwater is going to come up substantially during a wet season, that they build the basement high enough to avoid problems. And looking at the site, looks like a fairly wet site, or low site, I guess I should say.
It is.
And is there something that can be done to help the homeowners avoid wet basements?
I would expect that every home here would have a drain tile system with a sump pump. And Vern, I don't know if you can hear me, but can we address that in the covenants?
Yep, I can hear everybody just fine, and we most certainly can address it in the covenants. It's just a matter of disclosure of what is either recommended or required.
Because Randy has a very good point. These homes should have drain tile in sump pumps. Again, what we generally see after you put in sewer and water, which have granular bedding, and you put 5-6 feet of fill in that low area, it changes the groundwater condition somewhat. It lowers it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the utility trenches. Help dry it up.
So when you were saying 5 to 6 feet of fill, that's what you're gonna raise the site 5 to 6 feet?
In some areas, yes.
Okay.
Especially in the lower end.
Yeah. No, that was gonna be my next question when you were saying you're bringing in fill. I was just wondering how much. So you're looking 5 to 6 feet in the lower part.
Right. We're hooking on to sewer here in Laufenburg.
Yep.
We're extending it at minimum grade and then bringing that sewer around on Angeles to serve this area. Just to get cover over that sewer, we have to raise the streets 5 or 6 feet in areas.
Okay. So you
Which
can
means-
gravity fill it.
Right, so that we have cover over the sewer and the gravity drains back. And we're doing the same then for the lots on either side. We're raising the whole thing so that it all works together.
Well, 5 to 6 feet of fill, if there's 2 feet to groundwater, is 7 feet, 8 feet.
And if you put your house 2.5 feet above the street, which is very typical, then when you dig down 9 feet from that 2.5 above the street, you are above the groundwater.
Will the soil that's at the bottom of the basement excavation be suitable for and stable enough to support a home? I don't, when I had my basement dug, I think the village had to come in and they actually looked at, whether it was topsoil or whether there was a clay layer or, they actually looked at what the footing was going to set on. And I had to have a particular material. And if I didn't have it, they would have had to go a little deeper, to be honest. I didn't have to do that, but what are they going to find when they dig here? Is it going to be suitable material for footings for homes?
I don't have those borings in front of me, but my recollection is that the bearing pressure was not too bad. There were wet conditions, but the density of the soil was okay, and a house is considered a fairly light load, and I'll look at it again, but I don't recall that being an issue.
Okay, the gist of my comments is just that this is a pretty wet site, a low site, and that to the extent that we can avoid bad surprises for homeowners when they dig basements or footings, that we do as much as we can up front to avoid that problem later.
And would it be acceptable to address that as Ron has suggested in the covenants? We could have Vern draft a section to the covenants for your review.
I would welcome that. I think it's a
Good idea.
Okay.
I think when we do these, I think it's so important, as I mentioned earlier, to dot the i's and cross the t's. Because if they sure come back to haunt you, I mean, it's amazing how much time we spend after these things are all done dealing with stuff. So that was really good. I think that's a good idea. And if that's what's recommended, man, we should go. You guys are the engineers on that. I don't know how much that adds to the cost of a new house, drain tile and a pump,
Not much.
It's well worth it.
Yeah. In fact,
Yes.
what I've seen lately is the builders are using a footing form that's honeycombed,
Oh.
and the form never comes out. That becomes your drain tile. And that's, yeah, so it's getting more efficient.
All right, I don't want to hog everything. Does anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I have one more. Okay, go ahead, Judy.
And I'm just throwing out there, I don't know how people feel about it, just in case they missed it. 3.07 for the fencing, how does everybody feel like the black rod iron fencing is the only type of fence with the whole thing? That it's uniform, or how do you guys feel about that?
What number was that?
3.07.
3.07.
Do you feel like we need to put that as?
Well, this actually says you can't have a fence, but if you're going to fence in a pool or something,
Right.
it has to be that.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
well, I personally am not in favor, but that's what we've done with almost other developments, I guess. People don't like fencing, it does block things out. In my neighborhood, there was no fence for 25 years, and as soon as that 25 years, for example, my neighbor, not that he can't, he put up a privacy fence, and it did kind of split the neighborhood, the view shed and everything like that when we put it, so I'm kind of in favor of no fences, even though when people spend $450,000 and plus to build a house, you think, yeah, that if they want a fence, they should be able to have a fence. And can I just ask, since we're on that, the clothesline, it says no permanent clothesline. You're not counting the umbrella type that you can put in and out of holes, right? People can have those, right? You're talking about the poles with the T-poles with the line across it that stay forever and they're in cement, but you're not talking about that umbrella type that people pull in and out all the time.
Vern, can you address that?
Yep, that would be my understanding, not the permanent type.
Well, I've also seen the type where you pull them out.
Yeah. So my last one, I was a little bit early. Do you know on that, can you show us on your map there where the easements besides those two that are well defined at the bottom? You got the two on the bottom that are 20 feet. So those are well defined, but are there any others throughout this development? And I don't care about the ones that go along the road, I'm talking about the ones that go between houses or across people's middle of their backyard. Are there any more on this?
And Jay, you're referring to?
Yeah, between 60 and 61, yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I think that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, those I see, and I like those. Those are 20 feet wide.
Mhm.
My understanding, then there's 10 feet setback for the houses on each side.
Jay, those are actually not easements, which is a better way to go. So those are part of the outlot, which is nice because the situation you're describing is when they're easements, that is land that people own, subject to an easement, and that gets contentious. That these are actual they're not owned by a this is village property at the end when it gets dedicated. So these are dedicated lanes for access to trails and the open space.
Oh, great, thank you. So are there any easements then that go between houses at all?
No.
Oh, great.
So for instance, if you are, up on lots 20, 13, 14, 15, 16 through 21, we will have a trail through the outlot, outlot 2. And then ultimately the two 20-foot lanes that you mentioned will also provide access to the trails and open space.
Very good, thank you. Judy?
In And earlier today when we talked, they said something about tonight, about pre-sales in bigger sections. Have you decided like how many, like maybe a bigger section that have to be pre-sold or anything like that for the builder?
Jeff, do you want to address that?
Yeah, we have not determined, so I think if I understand the question is, how many pre-sales are necessary in order for the project to move forward on the time frame I mentioned? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
And there's not a set number of pre-sales, but as we negotiate with various builders, we're looking at again, not set in stone, but a minimum of 30 to 40 lots sold on a pre-sale basis, and ultimately the desire is to sell 100% on a pre-sale basis. And what that looks like is we will contract for individual lots, and that contract will have a obligation of the buyer to close on that lot within X number of days of the of infrastructure completion and building permits being made available.
Hey, Jeff, you said, just a follow-up, you said earlier on that you're looking at selling some of these to tract building companies and then leaving some for individual builders. Do you have an idea on, like, percentage-wise, how many would go to tract builders versus individual builders?
Not specifically, but just rough numbers, 50-50.
Okay.
60-40. We're looking at the lots south of Laufenburg being more desirable lots to sell to individuals, and the lots north of Laufenburg are the ones that we are proposing to volume builders.
Who will implement the covenants in terms of design review and so forth if there's multiple owners? That is, some of the lots owned by yourself, others by builders and so forth. How's that going to work?
So we will run the architectural control committee until all of the lots are sold and all of the houses are through the initial houses are through the process. Once that is done, there's a provision in the document for us to turn the architectural control over to the neighborhood. But during our period of control, we intend to hire a third-party architect to conduct those reviews. Lots of times a developer will do it themselves or have people on their staff, and in this case, we're going to turn it over to a third-party architect.
And that would be true even if you sell a block of lots to
Absolutely. All lots are subject to the covenants.
So let me ask you, is one of those in there says that once the lot has been sold and closed, you have 12 months to get the house up. So I guess I'm just wondering if a volume builder would be able to meet that demand or meet that. And I just question that if that's something you really wanted or that was just kind of a copy thing, because we've had developments where lots have stayed open for years. I mean, I look on Church Street, those lots have been there for 30 years. One was just built last summer and there's one just being built now. So is that something you wanted where you have that time limit, or is that just something you think the village wants?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll let Vern cover the legalities of it. But our intent is to require for instance, an individual. We don't want people speculating on the lots. So if an individual buys 49, we want them to build on that lot and not sit on it as an investment. With respect to, it's a great question, with respect to a larger bulk sale, we do have the ability in the document to waive that requirement for any sale. But no, the intent, or we do not expect someone to come in and buy 10 lots and build on all of them within a year.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Kevin?
Thanks. I'll start off with the things that I think are real positives, and the subdivision continues to hit a lot of our housing and neighborhood development program goals and our strategic plan, so I think that's great, which includes diversity of housing. Sidewalks, big fan of sidewalks and the trails that you put in. I think those are all hitting the goals that we've recommended in the past. I had some questions about the basement, so thank you for getting on that as well. And then I guess I'm still concerned about two things though, which is water, whether it's infiltration or runoff, and then traffic. So let's start with traffic. And then, sorry if I missed it before I came in. Is there going to be stop signs or other traffic control measures along Laufenberg at the intersections of Conrad and Angeles? Do we know that yet?
I am not aware of what the village desires are there. I had not anticipated any stop signs on Laufenberg.
So that would mean from Brewery to, what is this road called?
Hilltop.
Hilltop. That is probably a mile, not quite a mile, but it's a long road without a single stop sign that whole way.
I guess a roundabout.
Where?
Roundabout right before you get into this development.
Where?
Unless that's changed.
That won't be a roundabout, that's just a cul-de-sac that's gonna be blown through. That'll just be a.
Like, don't we have a traffic circle there or no?
There's,
Right now it's just a loop, but no,
Yeah.
you're right, it's gonna be gone.
Oh, I thought there was always gonna be like a traffic circle or a roundabout from the old Laufenberg to the new.
well, there would be room to put in.
Oh, no, I'm not asking for one, I just always thought that was part of the
Well,
plan.
yeah, despite what, I think 98 is a real, I think the staff pointed that out, a really high number. I think that's hard to believe. It would be great if it's true, but it's also hard to believe, especially since, there's a core of individuals living down Brewery Road, whether they're up the hill, down the hill, sideways, that people will still not get onto Main Street and other places. I see an increase in traffic there to some degree. And I guess I'm encouraging the staff and the engineers and our engineer and you guys, the developers, to look at traffic control measures here to slow the traffic and further discourage, I think was the word you used earlier, Ron, discourage traffic from, all the stop signs, the iterative stop signs getting downtown. Well, if we could make a couple more or roundabouts and deter people from coming back down Laufenberg, because it is as we all know, pretty bad crowded road, pushing them out toward County P, I would certainly encourage that in the development.
From our perspective, we are open to whatever it is the village desires in terms of traffic calming.
Yeah, from our staff point of view, we'll take that under advice and then we'll report back.
Okay, thank you.
Were there anything else?
Yeah, and then regarding the water, I guess, I don't know, and again, my apologies if I can't give it to you this late. Are we going to talk more specifically about the infiltration?
Yes, we are, because that's one we're just trying to get, yeah.
Then I'll just leave it for now. Thank you.
All right, anybody else, general questions, comments for them? All right, so let's go down the list, A through E. All right, what they're asking for is a variance from 83.19 sub B, allowing post-development infiltration volume to be 80% of pre-settlement volume. And I think the ordinance says 90, right?
Yes.
Yeah, our ordinance says 100, state limit is 90.
Yeah, okay.
Did we change our ordinance?
We did.
Oh, we got a bunch of them we gotta change. All right, Kevin, this is kind of what I think,
Yeah.
so go ahead, why don't you lead it off?
Well, yeah, it's simple. I mean, we are obviously, we're all living with the memory of August 2018. This is a long, relatively narrow watershed. Actually, yeah, it runs from at least 3 or 4 miles, pretty straight down the valley. Brewery Creek was one of the reasons the village flooded so bad. It flooded since then, and it flooded before then. And we have issues that are no fault of the developer, this developer's, that we have to address, but then also we're just adding to the problem. And so, I guess I'm here to hear why we can't hit 90. Why we're not gonna be able to reach that, and whatever we can do to mitigate water. Period. I mean, I would prefer to keep it at 100 and mitigate it even further if we can, because I think we need 120% in order to really do the job right. So I guess I'm here to hear and hear the best arguments, but this is a major concern for me, and I'm sure it is, and I know it is for everybody that lives downstream.
When we look at the infiltration with Carp C, the soils report was part of that review. And as mentioned, very shallow to groundwater. So to try and infiltrate on existing soils does not work well. Once we bring in fill to raise street and lot areas, you are compacting that fill in order to build roads, build buildings. So that doesn't work well to meet that infiltration requirement either. So with that in mind, Carp C said, well, we'd like you to make an effort, the best effort you can to meet infiltration, but we understand that you won't be able to hit the 90%. So that's where it was left. The fact that we're going to have 4,000 feet of very flat swales that all the street water runs into was a plus, because that promotes infiltration to some degree of all of that street water. And then we also had talked about diverting gutters, all rain gutters to yard areas. And then tonight we talked about promoting rain gardens. So that was the direction we were heading.
And I guess, just to kind of piggyback on Kevin, I think as policymakers, we have right now in the works of getting grants and stuff to try to do flood mitigation. And obviously this side of town is actually part of the 14 acres that we're getting with that. We're looking to do that. So I think I'm kind of with Kevin. So when citizens downstream say, how can you do this when we know we already have a flooding problem? Mm-hmm. What is our response? What is the response that we can make as policymakers to make it so it makes sense to people? That's, I think, kind of where I'm at too, because it seems counterproductive that we're spending money for flood mitigation, but then we're allowing a development just on this other side of the road to add to the problem.
You bet. Good question. And I should have mentioned the 14 acres east of P is part of this preliminary plat. And that land will be dedicated to the village as part of the stormwater mitigation. So to me, this plat is part of that solution. The flooding occurs from peak runoff, not from infiltration efforts. It's when you get a 100-year storm and you get the peak runoff from that, that's what you need to control to prevent flooding. This project will do that. We'll have peak control for every storm event through the 100-year. And because of the way that the rules are set up, that release rate is at the rate that it would have been if this were native grasses, not cornfield. So right now, the peak runoff from this land is greater than it will be when we're done. Because we have to hold it back and release it at the rate as though this were pre-development, native grass. So we're actually reducing the peak rate for this project.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ron. I see what you're saying. I agree that the development may help with the peak runoff. But as you can see by all the channelization that exists on the entire map, the entire aerial photograph here, some of this was done before you're here. So the issue is not necessarily being better than it is now, it's being better than it should be. And that should be means we can go back, 100 years maybe, and re-meander all this. And we're fighting a battle, I guess, that has been made worse in over the last several decades, right? By straightening out these, by getting rid of wetlands. And I think that the development is going to maybe help this little piece, but there's still a bigger issue here that despite the development is still going to be in bad shape, I guess. So to go back to what Jay said, answering the question to the public, to our constituents, is an important part of it. But there's still a bigger issue at hand here. And maybe it's beyond this development. But we as this policy group, as this group and as the board, need to understand that and make recommendations and make policies that fix some of those issues. And frankly, maybe spend some money on this issue too.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the village goal on the east side.
14 acres, yeah. So do we know that, I'm going to go back one more to Bill or Mike, if you're on the call still. Do we know if we are doing what the 14 acres will do to help out with this subdivision, with the flooding issue in general? Or can we, and this goes back to infiltration, right? I know infiltration it's not the peak storm runoff, but infiltration helps, right? Because the storm doesn't come down and done. No, if the ground is saturated, it's going to run off quicker. But if it's infiltrating quicker, then the runoff won't be as bad. So there is a relationship between infiltration and runoff, right?
A small one.
Okay.
I mean, when you're truly talking about infiltration versus peak runoff, during the peaks, infiltration does not have much impact. Is what the models all show.
Okay. When you did the 80%, are you including any that's in the 14 acres?
No.
Okay.
We didn't address that.
And I want to reiterate that although the 14 acres is a part of the plot, the project of the 14 acres is its own project separate from the calculation.
Right, but I'm like I say, I'm still trying to answer. So it may be 80% here, but maybe we're picking up 20% in the 14 acres.
Yeah, we don't know those calculations.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is we don't know, but it's going to be a positive, right?
Certainly from a peak runoff, from a flooding standpoint, it'll be a huge positive.
And not even for infiltration?
Well,
because it's not coming from that development.
Well, and plus if you look at the land across the road, I don't know the village plans for improvements, but that's low and wet. So it's going to be hard to get a lot of infiltration there.
Oh, I see, yeah.
It'll store water great
Okay.
and release it slowly,
Yeah,
but I don't think you're going to get a lot into the ground.
okay, very good.
Let me asking the question another way. What would have to change on this plat to not require a variance from the 90% requirement? I mean, that's a huge, would be a huge impact. I mean, what would need to change in order to not have to grant the variance? Or is that not easy to answer?
It's not. I'm just thinking through how we'd even go about accomplishing it. Because if you set aside a block of land down here to infiltrate water, you're not gonna get it done in a wet season. Because of, you're so close to the creek. And it's back to that groundwater condition. So I don't even know, I don't have a ready answer for you.
Let me just, is there a type of, if you use the type of fill, are there types that are better for this than not? So if you use fill that was more sandy, would that be better than clay versus silk? I'm just wondering if there's.
Yeah, certainly sandy soil does, if that were used in specific areas, we could promote infiltration.
Okay.
Yeah, be a way to at least advance that. Yeah.
Is that feasible to do something like that?
Well,
You're going to be raising these lots to somehow suggest that it be a particular soil type?
where my mind was going with that was to use granular soils under the roadside swales.
Oh.
Because again, the front of the house, the front of the yard, all the roads go to these swales. And if we had a more granular soil there, I think we could help the situation.
And since we're talking, are you still looking into the possibility of taking land, some of the soil from other parts of the Xander property over, or, yeah, okay,
We are, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and Carrie is good with that.
okay.
Ron, do you know what the infiltration rate is as proposed currently?
Pardon?
The infiltration rate as the plan is proposed currently? You know what that is at?
I don't have it at my fingertips, Bill. Yeah.
All right, are there questions, or how do we want to proceed with this one?
Well, they suggested they're willing to implement the list that was put together by Bill and the staff, and comments tonight. Can they make those changes and come back to us once more?
Well, no, that would be overall, I'm looking at, what the one we're talking about, the variance.
Do we want to grant the variance for the 80%, or do we want to make it higher, or make it 90?
Well,
I mean, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, obviously 90 is the ideal, or better would be even better, but the law says 90.
I noticed the staff, under their recommendations, just didn't have a recommendation for this one.
Correct. Well, no, we addressed that they would have to request it as part of the
Okay.
process. So, I think, to take a step back here, I don't think that the plan commission necessarily has to approve or deny a variance tonight. We already addressed a number of items tonight that will kind of attempt to answer the infiltration question. And, once that is incorporated into the plans, I'd like to see what that rate is, that we don't have a erosion control, stormwater management plan yet at this point.
So you're saying, Bill, that like if they might come back and say, well, it's over 80, but it might be 89. Right, and so, boy, it's really close to 90. So, yeah, I would be supportive to see just where it's at or how high it can get, and the variance be as high as possible if it has to be a variance at all. So if it's 82 or 85 or 87, whatever the number is, it's hard to swallow giving a variance in this case for water.
The reason that it's in there, because it was, you know, we had not addressed it, as a group here yet, and so we wanted to find out what the response was from the planning commission as how we can kind of attack.
Or have Eric, go ahead.
Ron, you know, you brought up an interesting thing earlier, stating that a significant flood event is kind of different than the infiltration issue. Any more information we could have on that? I mean, I think the biggest concern here is what's gonna happen downstream when we have another huge rainstorm. I mean, I'm almost gathering from what you're saying is that in that issue, it's not, the water's flowing so fast, it really doesn't infiltrate hardly at all, and it's just running off. The problem we're trying to eliminate is downstream flooding. How do we go about that versus saying, you know, nickel and diming a couple of % on a infiltration rate?
I can certainly summarize that for the next time around, you know, with our next submittal. But it really does come down to the fact that the infiltration component, there's quite a few different items that we look at for stormwater management. Peak control being a primary one, sediment reduction, infiltration, oil and grease control. And the infiltration is there to help recharge groundwater. It's not there to mitigate floods. That's the peak part of it. And the sediment reduction is there to help filter sediments out of the water. So each one has its own role. And again, the infiltration usually, I mean, the way these are all set up is that occurs after the storm event. Not really during, not before. It's you store the water and you release it slowly, but it's also being infiltrated after the event. Well, again, for the big village concern is, hey, we got to knock the peak off, and we will be doing that.
Okay. And is there any way to utilize that land on the other side of P to do that? I understand that's probably a separate project.
Yeah,
That we have
put
to
in
deal
for
with, but-
plan for that.
Okay.
Yeah, has the village done any soils? Well, no, you wouldn't have done any soils exploration over there probably.
Well, we had.
Yeah, we
Luna's
had
coming out.
preliminary engineering, done on, that 14 acres and then some more property. And there had been a plan proposed for that as part of the flood mitigation project there. So, yeah, and so we looked at it.
Well, I'll circle back with village staff on that to see if something could be done on the east side. You know, if there's a sand vein, or we can do something on the edge to promote infiltration. But I would have to see what your plans look like.
And I thought at one time we were thinking that there are higher spots there that we were thinking of scraping, and there was some thought of moving it over to your side.
Well, I think that's when you were also looking at,
Yeah, there would have been a lot more, but what I'm saying is I think within that 14 acres, I thought there was still some.
Yeah, most of that stuff in that 14 acres is probably not suitable soil
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
construction. It's gonna be similar soils to what's in this outlot here.
Okay.
There's a soil map.
Okay.
a lot of it's floodplain and wetlands.
Yeah, what they wanna see, almost all of it, if you look at that map there.
All right, just to move this on, I guess I would ask that maybe we've talked about it a little bit, maybe there are, like using different types of soil, like you mentioned, just to see what this, number might be.
Okay.
I mean, I clearly understand that we're probably not gonna hit 90, so that's, well, that's how it is. So we're not gonna, at least from my perspective, I'm not looking to kill the project because of that, but I would like to get it as high as we can, because I think it serves a good purpose. I think that's a good thing to recharge the groundwater, so if we can, whatever we can. So that, I guess, just a little bit more info on that one would probably be the best.
Okay.
Is that kind of what the group is thinking? I don't want to speak for everybody.
I cannot stop thinking about the flooding that I saw along,
I think it died.
the flooding I saw along Brewery Creek, and I know we all think about that, it was terrible, really terrible, and terrible for people I know. I mean, that's, I want to satisfy a code requirement here or something to the greatest extent that we can, but I sure don't want to make the problem worse. I mean, we just can't.
But it sounds like this development is going to handle that part of it, the actual flood, the intense flooding. But that's something I think we just have to have a little bit more information so it's easier to educate the public when numbers come out and we have this. Because I understand it now, it's two really different topics and they're very different, so it takes different strategies to, and so at this one, to me, even if we got to 90%, that's not necessarily gonna stop or lower any of the flooding.
And this is only going to manage the water off of that piece of property. It's not going to manage it off everywhere else. So floods are still going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I said, we're slowly, hopefully trying to mitigate them, but yes, we can't ever end it totally. Mother Nature's too powerful for that. All right, let's go to, we should be able to go B, review and action. I don't think we'll take any action. I think we've done a pretty good job in reviewing already. Is there any of the covenants that we haven't talked about already?
I thought they were good. I thought they were good.
Yeah, so I see your notes, so I think, Ron, you covered most of them, got them covered. So then C would be the environmental checklist and assessment. Bill, you want to just give a summary, because didn't you put that together?
So actually, it was put together by the developer, but in the packet you have, there's a checklist that we use as part of the section 83 here, for that to go through the environmental assessment. Within the ordinance itself, it does allow for the village plan commission to request more information if they would like. If you look at the board here, this is the environmental map that's been provided. It includes floodplains, wetlands, other technical data that's required by that checklist. The map of the soils here, as you can see, again, this is the opportunity for the planning commission to request any more environmental information or data. And if you don't have any requests, that's fine. We'll continue on.
All right, anybody have any questions on the checklist or assessment? Is this something we want to take action, or should we just wait till it comes?
I would say let's just wait.
Okay.
Take action on all items at one time, that makes it a lot easier in the future for someone to reference.
All right, review and action on the impact study, and that's what you kind of reviewed at the very beginning of the meeting, Ron?
I touched on a couple of things. The staff comments did too.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions or comments they want to make on the impact study? All right, so then, I guess the last one, we'll just wait until it comes back. My preference would be it comes back here, and we can see all these changes. We can do it in December, so I think it'll make it a lot easier once it gets to the board too.
You bet.
I think if we get it all done here, I think it'll it'll have a much better chance of sailing through the board. No?
Absolutely, Jay.
Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I just think if we get it all tightly done, then.
How many times have you looked at that?
Yeah, well, I know, but see, that's one, and that's my example. I think that because we didn't dot our i's and cross our t's right away, we were in such a pressure to get it through. Not by our fault, but, no, go ahead, Kevin.
No, you're right. So, just a quick comment in regards to the next meetings, or the timeline for the next meetings here. I do have on my desk, petition for, additional, rooftop mounted solar panels on a commercial property. There's a company actually. And so we are, hoping to set a meeting, a plan commission meeting for, we had here for November. Well, before that, November 19th. Thursday, and wondering what the plan commission would feel about that, and if that's the date, potentially be a landing date for material.
Thursday, November 19th.
Thursday.
2 weeks from today.
That would provide us enough time to.
I have church finance.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll shoot an email on a date.
I could do that Monday the
Oh, that's the board meeting.
23rd.
I do not want to do a double one.
Come on, do a joint meeting.
I can let you know, Bill, also because I'm meeting with him Friday morning and we'll see if we, if it's not realistic to get it done this year, then I'm not gonna be pushing.
Okay.
So we'll find out for sure, but he kind of implied that maybe he could.
And then, potentially impacting kind of the back end of the review for Ellie's, preliminary plan in December, I know the board has talked about potentially moving their December meeting up a few weeks, so just so that.
Ours would still be the first Monday in December.
Correct.
I don't think we're gonna move the board meeting that far.
No, I'm saying as far as getting to the preliminary plot process, getting that review and then back.
Yeah.
By the board before end of year.
I am hopeful when it comes back that it's gonna go a lot quicker. Because I think people made their comments and stuff.
I don't think we're not gonna find anything more, I don't believe.
Right. So I'm hoping that it's gonna be a lot shorter and easier.
So, yeah, we certainly plan to address every comment. Bill, when would you like to see everything turned around to you to, I suspect you'll review our changes and update your staff report. Is that how that'll work?
Yeah, that's correct. So if we could get the changes, the earlier the better, that way we can get that run across the staff. Make sure that it's complete, and then so that we get enough time to get that out to the plan commission for review before, the next plan commission meeting.
A couple weeks, is that acceptable, or is that?
Yeah, generally, generally I like to have it at least 2 weeks.
Okay. Ron, does that work?
I think that's a good schedule.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for working with us on this.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you as
Yeah, you
well,
bet.
everybody.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say so move. Adjourn.
You bet.
Very good.
So one last comment. When I worked on the Cedar Hill,
Okay, hold the guy.
yeah, when I worked on the Cedar Hill project out on KP, we did the swales and we did a infiltration area down by KP, all at the urging of Roger Bannerman.
And I don't know if any of you knew him or worked with him, but he was a DNR guy that really was promoting stormwater management way back when. And his obit was in the paper last week. But good guy. See, we lost a good one.
He was ahead of the curve on that particular.
He was, yeah, and he just got excited teaching people. And, yeah.
Julie's in a hurry to go somewhere.
I am, to bed.
I was sorry to read that. He was,
Yeah.
oh gosh, he was